Hey guys, my name is Josh and I'm a coach for Zenith Poker, and today I'm starting a series where I just pick a few hands that I have played or a student has played recently, and I find the hand mildly interesting and want to review it in a video. I'm just going to be releasing one or two of these videos a week where I just go over, you know, two, maybe three hands. It's just going to be a real brief, like 15 to 20-minute video. Um, and I go through a few interesting decisions and some factors that would play into that. Uh, and so that's going to be what I'm kicking up today. So this sample, so earlier this year I went on a bit of a downswing, um, and I was playing on American sites which are untracked. So I decided just to play track sites. So this is a combination of ACR and Bovada. It's a mix of 200 Blitz on ACR, 200 reg tables, some 400 NL reg tables, and 500 reg tables on Ignition. So it's a quite a wide variety of a sample. And yeah, it's gone pretty well so far. The main purpose of this change was just so I could get a sample that I could review and review with a coach and feel much more confident about what I'm doing at the tables. Big change I've made is decreasing number of hands I'm playing per hour, and one thing I wasn't great about was just staying really focused and really locked in. And I think I've made some huge improvements in that department. So, I'm optimistic going forward. I'm glad I did this for myself. This was definitely like an investment, a time investment I needed to make into my game. So really focused on just like locking in and playing my A game every day. Whether or not that happens is, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But, just making sure you're doing everything you can to make the right decisions is going to be important, especially for longevity, because, if you're mass tabling with a small win rate, the swings are going to get pretty insane. Whereas if you just like cut down the tables and you increase your win rate by 50%, the swings are going to go down significantly. So, it's pretty important for longevity as a pro. So now we'll move on to the hands. It's going to be, I'm just going to like go through the hand, give my general thoughts, and then we're going to dive into a sim. Okay, so this first hand was played at 500 NL on Bovada, and what appears to be a reg opens under the gun to 2.5, and we call in the big blind with 4-3 suited. Pretty standard defense at this rake structure. So this is the Zenith Poker preflop viewer. This is available for purchase on the Zenith website, and it has basically every open and response to every action in the preflop game tree. Lots of different sizes. So there's what comes with the preflop viewer is 100 big blinds, 6 max, 100 big blind heads up, 200 big blinds, 6 max, and 50 big blinds. So here's the standard open range under the gun. If we face a 2.5 big blind open, so you can see like there's just lots of different sizes. This is really just for completeness. Of course, you don't have to like split all your sizes here, but you can't overlook totally pre-flop exploits from a sizing perspective. I think people get a bit too focused on the frequency. I think there's lots of exploits to be made by choosing some different sizes pre-flop in a bunch of different spots. Anyhow, folds the big blind, And yeah, 4-3 suited is just going to be a defend. You know, the 6-3, the 5 deuce are going to be like the cuspy hands. And it's important to be positionally aware facing opens, right? Like, it's going to be quite a mistake to, you know, defend Jack 5 suited if you're just like not paying attention. You know, it's going to be like quite an EV mistake. So anyhow, back to the hand. We defend, and then we get a King 10-4 flop, and under the gun c-bets 1/3, and this is going to be a very high frequency c-bet board, and so my initial evaluation is it's a very good looking board for imposition, which is true. Although we are going to have some very strong value hands. So on a board like this, if we check raise, you know, our value is, oh geez, I accidentally just scrolled. Okay, we'll go to the flop. So spoiler alert, I check raise the flop, and I go quite big. And the reason for this is because if I check raise a board like King 10-4, I'm basically saying I've now outdrawn Ace King, right? Because there's no point in check raising something like, you know, King Jack or King 9 for value, because the under the gun player is going to be so tight. Like he's just going to have so many strong value hands on this board. You know, it's quite possible that facing a pot check raise on this board, he's supposed to fold some pretty strong hands. You know, maybe even some top pair. Like top pair, no backdoor would make sense as a fold sometimes. So the reasoning for this hand is I have a 4 in my hand, which, like, typically in a lot of spots where you're very polar, you want to be using cards that sort of match up with your value. So, like, a lot of my check raises here for value are going to be 10s, and so like middle set, bottom set, and then King 10. So you know, if I'm check raising here, it's going to be a very strong value hand. And I'll, against an under the gun open, I'll even have some Ace King here, some Ace King off. So anyhow, that was the reasoning for this. However, generally, especially on boards that are going to be a bit better for imposition, we want to be using these bottom pairs with a backdoor for the most part. So my thought process here was just that I think facing a pot check raise here, I would imagine most of the pool is going to overfold by quite a decent margin. My reasoning for this is because it's quite possible he's just like c-betting his entire range for, you know, a small size, which is totally fine on this board, but you're going to be so condensed to, like, as the under the gun player, you're going to be so condensed to very strong value hands that it would start to make sense to use some bigger sizes on this board because, you know, you're going to have something like Ace King, a significantly higher density at a time. Like, under the gun is opening like King Deuce suited, you know, or 10-9 off. So, you know, like in later positions, it would make a bit more sense to like have a higher frequency small size. But I think, you know, as from the under the gun perspective, I would tend to have like a pretty reasonable frequency of big bets. So, you know, I think on this board I would do something like quarter pot or third pot, and then I'd have like an 80% size for like Ace King, maybe a bit of King Queen, and then you know, aces would be a really good one to put into a big size, unblocking all the pairs. So, you know, my thought here was just that this is going to be, you know, maybe a bit scary, especially at mid stakes where lots of players are... Oh, geez, I did it again. Lots of players are going to be c-betting really high frequency across most boards because the pool is under check raising. I mean, this probably isn't like an over c-bet. Like, this is going to be a range c-bet in theory for sure. It's just that most regs are under the impression that most other regs are under check raising. So, you know, I think these sort of things work pretty well. And then, you know, I'm pretty confident that I can get plenty of regs to fold, you know, king 7, king 8, king 9 here quite often. And then, I mean, almost surely overfolding like the middle pair stuff. So I think this is going to work abnormally well. I'll pull this sum up. Let's see. Yeah, so these are sims available at zenith.poker. These are it's a database in GTO Plus of 4-span high boards. All 4-span means is there are 4 different ranks on the turn that could come and complete a straight. So, you know, King 10-3 is a 4-span board because a 9, Jack, Queen, or Ace would complete straight draws on the turn. So it's a 4-span board. So here you can see it's going to be a mix of some mostly smaller sizes, and then there's going to be a bit of like potting with, you know, Ace, King, King, Queen, Aces. But you can see like on some of these other higher boards, there's going to be some bigger sizes going in. So like, you know, King, Queen, X is going to be a prime example. Really, like the wetter the board, the more you're going to see this. Yeah, like King, Jack 5, King, Jack 5 rainbow. There's going to be a lot of big bets in there, and it's really just a function of you know, the top of range advantage, like the kings, aces, ace, king. Like imposition just has a much higher density of those very strong hands. So here, like plenty of this bottom pair stuff is going to get mixed in, but it's going to be like the bottom pair of the backdoor. And yeah, just notice like on a board like this, a lot of our check raises are going to get shifted from, so like instead of like Queen 10 off, we'd much rather use like 5-4 the backdoor. You know, Queen 10 with the backdoor, the open enders with the backdoor is going to be pretty good. But you know, when we have a bottom pair like this, especially the backdoor, it's going to be pretty advantageous because, you know, if we check raise to this pot size, we can see like plenty of pairs are starting to fold, and then they're pure continuing ace 5, and that's just because our check raises are so polar that we're going to be we're repping like, you know, bottom set a lot, bottom set and top 2 a lot. So when they have a 5 in their hand, it's gonna be a much better bluff catcher than something like Jack 10. Even, you know, ace 5 of hearts without the backdoors is pure continuing. So generally just want to have a 5 in our hand here if we're like repping bottom set. But yeah, definitely prefers to continue or to raise with the backdoor here. So I you know, I'd be suspecting like a lot of the pool is maybe overfolding this weak top pair stuff. And I think against most players is probably a decent adjustment, especially on a board like this. Like I don't think most regs are getting overzealous with the check raises on King Jack 5. But just something to consider if you think, you know, you can get like some immediate big overfolds, then, you know, I would highly recommend pulling the trigger in these sorts of spots. And then, however, if you suspect someone is overfolding in a given node, and you get called, you need to be giving up a ton on the next street. It's very easy just to like blast, but like you made the exploit on the previous street under the assumption that they were going to be too tight going to the next street. So it's important to keep that in mind. Like if you're deploying an exploit because they're too weak or too strong in a given node, like you have to make that adjustment on the following streets. And then let's see, I think another funny thing about EP versus Big Blind and the check raise line is a lot of your bluffs, because you're so polar, a lot of your bluffs come from these bottom pairs. So after you check raise and the turn pairs the bottom card, you're actually basically going to range bet the spot because so many of your bluffs are just bottom pair. So you're now the turn's a 5 and now you're just piling 5-4. Yeah, and then you're just ripping it in, and yeah, getting called by all sorts of different hands. So just a fun one there. Okay, so that was the end of this first hand, but I wanted to walk you through my thought process there. Okay, so this next hand was played at 500 NL reg tables as well. And in this hand, the cutoff opens 2.5. I 3-bet the small blind or a tad deeper. Let's see, I'll just pull up the pre-flop range for this spot. So at 100 big blinds, the cutoff opens. Button folds. So here's our strategy at equilibrium for the spot. Ace Jack mostly continued, but it's close. I'd say slightly deeper. It could go either way, but I'm almost pure continuing Ace Jack off here. And then these are going to be the continues for the spot. Yeah, I mean, I tend to think this works pretty well pre-flop. Yeah, I mean, I would say in position 4 bets, especially in the earlier positions, are going to be, under 4 bet. So I think plenty of regs are finding the 4 bets button versus blinds, especially button versus small blind, but I think from the earlier positions, they just don't have enough. They're not continuing enough marginal hands as a 4-bet. So I think here they're going to be like overcalling like the King Jack, the Ace 10, the Ace 9, and like Ace Queen off. So I think this works reasonably well pre-flop. And then, yeah, I was just going to take a glance at the 200 big blind range. So 200 big blinds, yeah, so then, Ace Jack off is going to be, is just going to get mucked. It's close between flatting, but yeah, I think it, at higher rake structures, it's just going to be better as a muck. So anyhow, back to the hand. Imposition calls, and we get a Jack 9 deuce board. So this is kind of interesting. So the way this works is on these Jack Eye boards, in this configuration is small blind versus cutoff. This is going to be a really high frequency c-bet board because we have a bunch of Ace Jack off that imposition doesn't. So they're going to be pitching Ace Jack off pre, and we're going to have like some Jack X that they don't like. See, yeah, I mean Ace Jack being the big one, and then imposition's folding like some Queen Jack. So yeah, it seems to make sense. We're also going to be 3-betting like. Well, the Jack 10 is a very high frequency 3-bet for us. um, in addition to Queen Jack. And then the flats are going to be, you know, like some of this King Queen Ace Jack suited, Ace 10 suited stuff, Ace 9 suited being a big one. Um, so anyhow, we have a bunch of like offsuit Ace Jack here. So we tend to just c-bet a bunch. The general size here is just going to be this half pot size. It's a really nice catch-all size for top pair and over pairs. I just c-bet my entire range for half pot here, and I think it works really well. Yeah. And then, so we get this 4 turn, and this is a spot where you have to do some critical thinking. So I think when most regs try to think about their strategy with these sorts of hands that want to put like some big bets in, because like with Ace Jack here, it'd be really nice just to, you know, put in a really big bet. However, the problem solving part of this hand comes in where we need to figure out how often our opponent is going to bet into us, because if they bet into us a ton, then, you know, this is a really nice hand to check, because we block like some ace high that's going to be checking back. You know, like ace queen of diamonds, we block that hand that would check back, so then, you know, we're going to get bet into slightly more. However, we have to think about how money is made in this spot. So instead of considering like the frequency of the entire range that they're going to be betting, you know, the aggregate frequency of how often we get bet into here, I would be thinking a bit more about how often they're going to be betting their made hands. So, you know, a hand we're trying to stack here is a jack, right? So I'd be thinking like, okay, if they have Jack 10 or King Jack or Ace Jack, some hands that need to be betting quite often, do I think they're going to be over or under stabbing those hands? And I would tend to think that probably understabbing. I think regs that have a more theoretical approach to the game are going to be understabbing here. Like something like Jack 10, I would imagine, is a very high frequency stab when check 2 on the turn here, because it's the top pair without an overcard, so it needs a tad bit more protection. And on a board slightly lower like this, like there's just so many overcards to not deny equity from. So, you know, whereas on maybe like a queen high board, something like Queen Jack wouldn't get stabbed as often, but on a Jack or 10 high board, you know, these top pairs without the overcard are going to get stabbed very frequently. So I think you know, with that being the case, I think I should just put in a big bet myself, because yeah, they might overstab some air stuff like King Queen, but the way we make a lot of money with this hand is by getting money in on the turn against like a worse Jack. And I think I generally just think they're understabbing these spots with those hands. And not to mention, you have to think about, like, poker's a multi-street game, so you have to think about, okay, like what's the EV of all my lines, and then, I mean, if we just decided to check call, which I don't think is a viable option here, because like we have the nut top pair and they're mostly going to be 4-betting over pairs here. Like what happens on the river, I think if, you know, they stab top pair, you know, in theory they probably have to jam the river with top pair very often, even like some pretty marginal top pair, because we're pretty much just playing for stacks on the turn with an overpair. On a board this dry, we're just trying to stack a jack, you know, if we have like queens or kings. So then in theory, after we check call, I think they're just going to have to put money in with a decent amount of the Jack X. I'm actually curious to see what the sim says, but yeah. So that's kind of my train of thought here. So I do elect to check, which I mean with the Ace of Diamonds is okay, but I think in hindsight I still prefer to just put in a big bet here. So turn goes check check, and now on a river 9, it's about the brickest river in the deck. I mean aside from a low card, of course, but he's not gonna have a lot of 9x from pre-flop. He'll have like the occasional ace 9 or 10 9. But 9-8 mostly gets pitched. Ace 9 is even marginal pre-flop, so it's a pretty big brick. And so here, I think it makes a good amount of sense to have some very big bets, because like the turn card is just so dry that if you have a hand like aces or kings, you don't necessarily need to just pile. If the turn was like a 7 of diamonds or something, and we have queens, we'd be much more inclined to just like stick as much money in as possible. But here we're definitely gonna have some turn traps, so I think having some jams on this river makes sense, especially with our hand. I mean, we have not quite the nuts, but pretty close. And my thought in game is, I think if he has something like Jack 10, Queen Jack, I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's going to reopen for me. So I'm also curious to see what the sim says about this delayed river spot reopening in position. So these were kind of my general thoughts. I'm gonna pull up this sim real quick. So here's Jack 9 deuce. I just gave the sim like a half pot c bet, and you can see it's like very, very high frequency. The hands that end up checking flop are just like the garbage give ups, like ace 3 of hearts, ace 4 of hearts. And remember, it's like totally fine to give up those hands, barring a read that your opponent is like overfolding or something. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't imagine most players are overfolding these slightly tighter configurations by a huge margin. Anyhow, bet call, and then we get this 4 of hearts. So you can see like the overpairs are mostly just betting, and then ace jack is sort of like the trap hand. So yeah, I mean, queen jack, king jack, most of the jack X just putting another big bet in. However, if we check, so like jack 10 is going to be a pure stab here, so, like I was talking about earlier, and then king jack, ace jack, very, very high frequency stabs. Generally, I just don't think players are reopening often enough here. Like, you see, like they're supposed to like just like mostly bet ace queen, king queen, and I don't think this is happening much at all. And then especially something like king jack, queen jack, especially jack 10. I just don't think this is happening enough. So then if we check and face a bet, we're getting the money in with ace jack. And then if we have the ace of hearts, we occasionally check call the turn, but it's just because we unblock some bluffs that, like the ace queen with a backdoor stuff that floats the flop, we unblock those sorts of hands that could bluff for us. So turn goes check check, and then the river was a 9, I believe. Yeah, so here we're mostly playing mostly very big better check. However, a lot of our turn range is just going to be give ups like ace king, ace queen. So we're going to have to do lots of checking on the river, and it's a very good spot where if you think your opponent is going to over stab the river, to check back with a relatively strong hand. Like I would just go ahead and pure reopen with Jack 10 here, because your hand is really trying to accomplish, this equity denial thing. So, that's the reason this hand is betting, and then, ace jack. But you can get, if you think you have, a read on your opponent, you can start to get a bit tricky with this king jack, queen jack stuff. So yeah, on the river, we're just playing very big better check most of the time, and then if we have something like, jack 10 or tens or something, in theory, like, if you think about it, if we have something like jack 10, we have a very, very strong hand in theory, right? Because our opponent is supposed to reopen with king jack, ace jack, almost pure. So if we have jack 10, we have like a very strong hand. In practice, not so much the case. And so it's okay to, like, develop a bit of a block size. So this is the river range, the betting range on the river after it goes check, check, check. So yeah, any jack is just pure reopening. And then even tens. So yeah, in this line, but it's really just because ace jack is mostly getting money in earlier, and then kings is just pure betting itself, and then yeah, jack 10, king jack are pure betting. So these seemingly marginal hands are actually, quite good. Yeah, queen jack with like almost 90% equity. So anyhow, goes check check, and then yeah, it just makes sense to have some jams here. The reason, so it might seem intuitive that you would trap aces more on the turn than kings. The reason this isn't the case is because small blind versus cutoff and hijack, the imposition player is going to be flatting ace king off pre quite a bit, which is sort of the hand that imposition wants to take to showdown. So you can see like ace queen is stabbing as a bluff a lot on the turn, whereas ace king is just checking back, trying to show down. So that would be the reason that kings would trap here a lot. It's because you block imposition's check back, so you get bet into a bit more often. Yeah, so I think if I could go back and replay the hand, I would just put in a big bet on the turn, and then jam the river. I mean, on most rivers, that is. So yeah, those are my general thoughts. Hopefully this video was helpful and instructive. Please leave me some feedback in the comments. And until next time, thank you for watching.